pages which are paginated using Roman numbering. Then we have the main body which has chapter 1, 2, and 3. Then we have the references, which is a list of all the materials that we have referred to and quoted in our text. And then we have appendices. All that is numbered using Arabic numbering. So when we talk about subsection 1.1 and 1.2, we are talking about the sections in chapter 1, and it is the section 1 and section 2. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to identify the main sections of chapter 1 of the research proposal, and then explain section 1.1 and 1.2 of chapter 1 of the research proposal. Again, remember, we may differ in our structure based on your discipline, but what we are going to discuss, I am sure you will need it as you develop your research proposal. So let us first look at the sections of chapter 1 of the research proposal. Chapter 1 has got 12 subsections. But this 12 is when each and every section is listed. 1.1 is background to the study, and it is not background of the study. Background to the study, then statement of the problem, purpose of the study, objectives of the study, research questions, hypothesis, significance of the study, delimitations of the study, some will call it scope, limitations of the study, assumptions of the study, definition of significant terms, and organization of the study. Now, these sections may look more than what you may be familiar with, because we have listed objective research questions and hypotheses together. Some institutions will only have research questions and hypotheses, others will only have objectives and hypotheses, others may have the three. So that is why we have listed all the sections that may be appropriate in chapter 1. Other institutions have the purpose of the study as the general objective of the study, and then delimitations as the scope, and some may even bring the conceptual framework in chapter 1. So that is why we are saying, please follow your discipline, but the components and their explanation are done in this lecture. So we start with the background to the study. Background to the study serves as the basis of introducing the problem to the reader. The primary goal of the background is to catch the attention and interest of the reader by giving a historical overview of the phenomena under study. Note that when we say the phenomena under study, we are talking about the variables of the study, because that is what comprises of the phenomena. Background, therefore, involves reviewing literature which is related to the topic under investigation, or which is related to the variables under investigation, as a way of establishing that a relationship exists between the problem being investigated and the larger area of concern to people. Now, note that the problem that you are discussing at the background, or the problem you want to investigate, many people have written about it. But there is something special about your problem which we are going to discuss under section 1.2. And as you discuss your background, you are showing the reader that there exists a relationship between what you want to study and the concerns of the people. Even the literature that you are reviewing has written what you want to investigate. Now, as you review the literature, it should cover global, then regional, then the local perspective, and ensure that the materials that you are reviewing literature from are current. Unless you are referring to a classical material, the books, the materials that you use should not be more than 10 years old, especially in social sciences. So now, after writing your background, the next step, which is 1.2, is to state the problem. This is the section that defines the issue of concern more clearly. It is actually the section that describes the issues or the factors that make the stated problem a critical issue to warrant the study. Remember, in the background, you have given your reader the historical perspective or the historical overview of the problem. You now narrow it down to tell the reader, why do you need to go to the field, use your money and time to investigate that problem? Yet, as you discussed the background, you have shown that many other people have written about it. Why would you need to go to the field? That now is made clear at the statement of the problem. Statement of the problem should have 3 critical information. The first one is the statement of social need. This is the paragraph where the researcher shows that there is social need that the study intends to address, and it only requires research. In this section, the researcher describes the prevailing social conditions that have raised concerns that have led you to consider this as a problem worthy investigating. A good way of stating the statement of social need is to base the need on government or institutional or statistical data. Remember, we keep saying that research is anchored on data. It is not based on hearsay. And because we are social sciences, we are going to the field to solve a social problem. Therefore, as you state your problem, the first paragraph should show the need. That is what we call the statement of social need. And in this statement, you are telling the reader that there is a social problem that I need to address, and it can only be solved using research. And when you read this paragraph, you will be able to capture or be able to identify the need. This researcher wanted to compare the academic performance between the distance learning students and the on-campus students. But when you read literature, many people question the credibility of offering a science subject using a distance learning method. That has been documented. So you can see you are catching the attention of the reader that when you read literature, many authors or many researchers are questioning the credibility of distance learning, and especially when it has to be offered to a science subject. Then why would I need to go out and investigate? That is what the statement of social need is all about. The second statement or the second paragraph is the statement of knowledge gap. And this is where many students have a problem. At the statement of knowledge gap, it does not mean that you identify the gap by stating that the author you have read or the person you have quoted did not do A, B, C, D, or stating that there is no literature on your area of concern. Then how did you write the background? How will you do the literature review if there is no literature to support your problem? By identifying the knowledge gap, you are saying that many people have done this, but they have left out the area that your problem is coming to identify. There seems to be no sufficient answer to the problem that you are investigating. So how do you identify the knowledge gap? You identify the knowledge gap by looking at the methods that the person you have reviewed their literature have used and what you want to use. For instance, the person may have used only survey in their study, but you want to use mixed method. Now, that is a knowledge gap, but you don't leave it at stating that the current study will use mixed method. You need to give the reason why you feel that mixed method would be the best method, better than the survey that had been used by the material that you have referred to. The other one is the context. The books or the materials that you have referred to may have been used in the first world, But for you, you want to conduct your study in a third world country. That context, therefore, is one way in which you identify the study, you identify the research problem. The variables identified in the previous study. Probably you have brought in a new variable that you would want to study in the current study. And why have you added? The other one is conflicting findings. If we use the example of the differences between the academic performance of distance and on-campus students, there are some findings that you state that there is no difference between the academic performance. Others are stating there is a difference. So when you look at the two, then there is conflicting. So that is why you would want to go to the field and be able to identify what is the situation like as far as the problem you have identified is concerned. The other one could be groups that have been omitted. People who have been researching on your area have only been focusing on women, for instance, but they have left out men, they have left out the vulnerable groups. So your study may be coming in with vulnerable groups, and there is a reason why you have the vulnerable groups. So that is how you identify the knowledge gap. So please do not force the author of the work you are referring to do your study. You find students mentioning that they did not look at the influence of X on Y, yet that is the study that you want to do. So it is looking at their studies vis-a-vis the methods you are using, your context, your variables, their findings, and identifying the knowledge gap. So after you have identified the knowledge gap, that's why we are saying show how your study addresses those gaps and how it is unique, and it will make unique contribution. And you'll be able to read this statement of knowledge gap, and this one captures the context. It is the context that brings out the knowledge gap as far as this author is concerned. And now once you have your statement of knowledge gap, you had earlier on written your statement of social need, you now write the statement of the main research question, or what is called the researcher's intuition. Now, you write a statement, which is the last paragraph, where you use the word therefore, or hence the main research question, or hence the problem of this research is, like it is indicated in this paragraph. Now, what is the appropriate length of the statement of the problem? You find a student has 2 or 3 pages of the statement of the problem. Is that really a problem? And the answer is no, because a lot of information in those 2 or 3 pages should be in the background or in the literature review. Ideally, the statement of the problem should only have those 3 paragraphs, and it therefore means it should be just half a page. If it goes beyond half a page, then let it not go beyond 1 page, because you already gave the background. Now you are telling the reader why the problem you have identified warrants investigation. And that brings us to the end of this lesson. In this lesson, we have listed the 12 sections of chapter 1, and we have gone further to discuss section 1.1, which is background to the study, which we have said it is the historical overview of your phenomena, and in this case the phenomena refers to the variables, and we have also talked about the statement of the problem. This statement is an area where many students have a problem because they want to repeat the background in the statement of the problem. In our next section, we are going to discuss section 1.3, which is purpose of the study, and 1.4, which is objectives of the study. But before then, make sure you visit the research methods.
Hello, good morning, members.
Good morning, Mr. Shafi.
Good morning.
Oh, I'm very happy. That means I'm loud and clear. I thank Dr. Ahmad and Professor Antai for the video that has been provided, and I hope that we got a thing or two from there. I will also have to reiterate and say that all these, despite whatever the facilitator in the video was saying, we will all end up trying to abide by the rules of the structures provided by the various universities that we are going to deal with. I would just entertain about 2 questions or 2 comments about that, and then we shall drive into PhD2. PhD2, are you online? Peace, are you online? I just want to be sure so that I may not have to do it and Peace is not there. Let me just, yeah. Peace seems to be there. I just hope she can hear me.
I am there. I'm there.
Okay, great. So be ready. Any comments and questions from anyone about the video? Just see, Francis, you was saying kindly share the link of the video. Okay, we shall do that. Chigozi, is that all? Would you want to share what was interesting for you, so that everyone can have can share with you what you found interesting about the video?
Good morning, Shafiq and everyone. I liked the way she presented her problem statement systematically with the relevant examples, because it was chronological, as in not mixing up issues. So I'd like to just use her method to sharpen my problem statement.
Okay, thank you very much. I can see Stephen. Stephen, before I can, I think I will let. Yes, Stephen.
What's your doctor?
Your
Yes,
hand.
I am doctor.
This will. I just wanted to know you are online so that we can be sure in the next 40-30 in the next. I'll be dealing with what you are presenting. So let us first finish off Stephen, and then Dr. Mutumba will wrap up. Stephen, go ahead.
Good morning, senior members. Good morning, professors, and good morning, member. I appreciate for the opportunity, and again, thank you very much for having this opportunity to support us to improve in our writing. I really appreciate it for the first presentation. It's now it's really focusing on what we are supposed to do and to clean our work. As a young academicians, I still have a problem on the limitation of references. When we've been asked to make sure that we use a 10 years reference in our work, but I think we leave some of it. Thank you.
Okay, I knew that Stephen was going off because his voice had started to wobble a little bit. Amina, do you have something to say? I can see your mic is unmute. Amina, are you there? Okay. Amina seems to have left their mic unmute without. So Dr. Mutumba, can we let Dr. Mutumba wrap up? I see the hand up so that we can right away go into PhD2's presentation. Yes, Dr. Mutumba.
Thank you, Dr. To be Shafiq Mujavi. I want to apologize. It's my first time to be able to log on, because usually this time is difficult for me, but I'm happy to be here. I like the presentation in the video. However, it is skewed on statement of the problem. In some universities, including MOOCs and Makerere, there is room to have statement of the problem. And I think it is also in the next discussion, it will be good to look at the other side of statement of opportunity, as much as she presented statement of the problem, that which is the tradition. But with these changes brought by COVID and the rest, we need to see more of opportunities. So that other angle, a student might not be able to see the other side and make the shift, but I think we can come up with a solution. Then the other issue, she presented very well, the structure is okay, but something is missing. In some universities at PhD level, they need to see the problem or the opportunity state. They need to see the theory, the theoretical problem or the theoretical opportunity. So that's something else she missed in our structure. And I think that would be fitting well where there is something to do with knowledge gap. So it becomes a knowledge opportunity in case it's an opportunity. So in case it's a problem, it will be the knowledge gap. But so what does the other theory not bring out properly? So me, I just wanted that flexibility so that students, PhD is flexible. You're trying to contribute to knowledge. You're trying to build onto knowledge. So it's very important that people from their different angles, from their different fields and areas, still all see an opportunity to continue with their PhD proposals and thesis. So to me, I thank the presenter in the video, but at the same time, I think we should find a way of having everyone benefit, including those who are moving away from the tradition. Thank you so much. I submit.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mutumba. We are very, very grateful to have you. It is always a pleasure and very interesting to have you. I've worked with you for the last 15 years, and I'm very sure that you will be a great asset to this platform. And please, let's see you more often than not. We are very glad to have you today.
I'm humbled. I'm humbled.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much. So I think Dr. Mutumba has a point here. It is exactly something I talked about at the end of the video. And I said that different universities might have different structures. And one of the things he actually pointed out is the statement of opportunity, that it is a side that we should also think about. So if you find a student writing using statement of opportunity in their proposal or thesis, I think you should get it from that understanding that it's a tradition which is getting changed over time. Again, we have about 35 minutes to the end of the student congress, and today we are very privileged that we are going to be listening to PhD2's work. PhD2 does not have the whole proposal, but he has part of the proposal, and she feels that if she can present some of that work, then we will be able to give her some feedback so that she can move ahead. PhD2, are you online?
Yes, dear, I'm online, and I have even shared my. Have you seen my screen? I've shared my screen.
Great. Can you put that into full screen reading, and then you can, I think we will you will use about 15 to 20 minutes for your presentation, and then the remaining minutes will be used to give you.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and good morning, our mentors.
Full screen. I think you are yet to do that, and I think
I have shared.
Yes.
Have you seen it? Yes, I've.
Use slideshow.
Prof, I have done so. Maybe
you can go to view and then click slideshow. You see view up there? Okay. Peace, I don't think we can see the
view. Where is view? I'm not seeing view. Oh.
Can you reshare? Can you share again?
Yeah. Have you seen it?
Yes. Now you can use the arrows so that you can move back. Okay, you have the floor, piece. Go ahead.
Okay. My area of study is in supply chain, and my topic is logistical process integration among virtual warehouse vendors in Uganda. Top chair, you are listening. Technology is trying to disturb me.
Just don't share, just use the arrows.
The arrows are not moving. Okay.
Yes, so now you can go. Yes, that's
okay. Yes, I'm on the background to the study. As I have said that I'm looking at virtual warehouses. This is the background, the study. Virtual warehouses started the way back in 1995 by Amazon, and they were selling books on the web. Later, they started the business of CDs, cookwares, and vehicles. And as of now, they are selling electronics. Later, as they were in the business, eBay joined them in the same year of 1995. And for them, they were doing auctioning between the businesses. But as of now, they are both now technology providers. Virtual warehousing is where inventory information, the goods and services is provided and the business is done, the information is stored together. The storage facilities are managed remotely. It's an inventory information sharing mechanism based on information technology, and it involves the use of IT to share information between buyers and suppliers, and it's information-based rather than inventory-based. It's an imaginary storage facility on the web. So in smaller terms, we can easily say it's the business where it belongs to, where it involves buying and selling of pictures and catalogs. You just go on the internet, you look at the picture of a certain item, let me say a TV, you like it, then you make an order, and the order is, once an order is made, all the virtual warehouse vendors receive that message. And the immediate or the nearby vendor is able to deliver you in the shortest possible time. It involves the use of IT between buyers and suppliers. And in developing countries, this business has been there, as I have said, that it was being started by Amazon. And in the virtual warehousing, as I have said, that information is stored together, this virtual warehousing brings a concept of integration. And integration is of two levels. We have information systems integration and logistics or supply chain process integration. But my study is based on logistical process integration, which is looking at the core activities of information sharing, transportation, and storage of goods and services. Logistics integration can be done internally or externally. And the internal logistics involves the coordination, collaboration, and integration of logistics activities with other functional areas in an organization, while external integration requires the mixing of logistics activities with those of their customers and suppliers in the supply chain. Logistical process integration goes beyond sharing of information. It requires change of firm's culture and structure in order to facilitate the integration process. Some scholars have written and measured logistical processes, and according to literature, some have measured it in higher return on investment, higher return on assets, low costs, higher quality of products and services, higher level of customer service, effective knowledge management mechanisms. Others have looked at it in the form of trust, certification, satisfaction, and commitment in supporting effective logistics integration. The knowledge gap, most of the literature have looked at it in form of quantitative, some are in qualitative, but my study will be based on mixed methods. And in the literature, some are lacking definitions and operationalization of the concept. And the other, this area of study looks at other disciplines like manufacturing firms, like SMCs. But me, I will be based in the supply chain. And despite such failures in logistical process integration, the Mbe enterprise is relatively succeeding in achieving virtual warehousing performance. And I'm going to share with you my story of where I got the success from.
This we cannot see. I can't see the presentation anymore.
Yes, I was trying to share the success story.
Okay, do that.
Yes, my success story. I think, Chair, you are able to see. Chair.
Yes, I can see that.
Yes, my success story. The topic is logistical process integration among virtual warehouse vendors in Uganda. And the byline is uniting for mutual victory in virtual warehousing. Dembe Enterprises Limited was established in 1997 by Mr. Anil Daman with 4 employees along Murwana Road, Industrial Area, Kampala. However, it has grown and expanded with more than 10 branches across the country, employing more than 400 staff. To improve on its service delivery, Dembe has affiliated with other companies like Amara Industrial Park, Ponders Limited, Utomo, Uganda, and Lakewood Estates, Uganda, and its revenue base is estimated at $6.7 million annually. As a business strategy, Dembe had a very good customer care and preferred meeting their customers face-to-face and carry-out transaction. When business expanded, it was found prudent to embrace technology and integrate some logistics processing trading online via display of pictures and catalogs in order to remain competitive. However, change management was a challenge. Some staff were doubtful about this shift to virtual warehouses. They preferred physical interaction with customers. In 2013, the firm experienced high competition, both local and international. Information leakage to competitors, limited employees' participation in decision-making, lack of training, and reduced motivation. Employees lacked skills to participate in the firm activities. The firm had limited tools to use, for example, computers, laptop, smartphones with internet. Internet was slow and not reliable, which made information flow difficult. This affected business and sales decreased by 10%, customer satisfaction by 15%, increased costs by 25%, delay and poor quality of customer service by 13%. In order to address these challenges, top management made a decision to integrate logistical processes such as information flow, transportation, and storage. The executive committee was established to evaluate the core process and carry out change management awareness. The firm partnered with other firms after aligning its process with customer needs. The firm employed information security officers and competent information technology managers. This ensured its data center accessible from other many distribution centers. Staff was sensitized on handling information and use of passwords. Training of employees in computer basics and internet use was well done, assigning clear performance indicators. The top management put in place measures to monitor, evaluate, and appraise performance of staff monthly. Staff was given tools to use and subsidized prices, for example, mobile devices, smartphones, laptops, and iPads. All branches were equipped with computers, well connected with high-speed internet, and deployed an enterprise resource planning for easy inventory management. Due to this shift, Dembe has registered tremendous growth in its customer base, becoming the leader in distribution of fast-moving customer goods in East Africa and highly trusted. In the survey carried out in 2016, the firm was found to have improved customer satisfaction up to 87% and was given the People's Choice Award Uganda in 2016. Employee confidence and security has improved due to delegation. Staff are well motivated and now have a sense of belonging. The firm has increased in its revenue base, boasting $6.7 million annually. Due to this, the firm has joined the Community for Social Corporate Responsibility, where they have supported people living with HIV via UNAID. In this regard, Dembe has donated the following items: Dettol and Chic worth $240,000 to people living with HIV and vulnerable groups in Uganda via UNAIDS. This was done to protect them in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. The enterprise has also donated condoms worth UGX 2 billion to the Uganda People's Defense Forces. and at the Bombo Military Hospital. This was given to fight against STDs and promote family planning in the force and surrounding communities. From the contextual actions and results of the story, we learned that Dembe Enterprise Limited was able to make the overall virtual warehousing performance through logistical process integration. This enabled the firm to grow and expand, improving service delivery, motivated the employees, improved customer satisfaction, improved information flow, and going concern. This was due to the fact that employees were trained, which improved their ability to undertake specific and difficult goals on their own, managing intellectual input, the flows and storage of goods and services. Having closer working relationship with partners, which build trust, commitment, satisfaction, and better communication. Furthermore, the firm was able to interact with network assemblies, IT, and modern logistical processes that created unique internet-enabled capabilities and able to resolve operational difficulties through pattern collaboration and coordination. Chair, allow me to unshare this story and go back to the entire presentation. Statement of the problem, statement of the opportunity. World over, the scholars continue to appreciate the initiatives of logistical process integration among virtual warehouse vendors in enhancing virtual warehouse performance. There is a need for local business operating in Uganda to cope with the international changes of logistical process integration in the virtual warehousing industry in the global market. This should be done based on 3 core activities, that is information sharing, transportation, and storage of goods and services. The models used largely ignored responsibility shift, warehousing information quality, trust, and information technology, and these are the variables my study is based on. Given the theoretical understanding and methodological explanations of logistical process integration on virtual warehousing performance, every business, irrespective of the sector, feels the need to make their online process so that the brand awareness can increase and large audience can be reached. Logistical process integration plays a big role in the ability of the firm to perform. This is an important concept management tool only if and when both essential and external processes are integrated and supported by goal setting, resource dependence, and stewardship theories. In this study, the knowledge gap is used to indicate how far knowledge has stretched and clearly show that there is a contribution as far as logistical process integration is concerned. The opportunities is that despite logistical process integration failure, success stories and relevant theories exist to explain virtual warehousing performance in Uganda. As such, studying logistical process integration among virtual warehouse vendors is studied as an opportunity. The opportunity in this study is that goal setting, resource-dependent theory, and stewardship theories through responsibility shift, warehouse information quality, trust, and information technology can explain virtual warehousing performance in Uganda. This will contribute to knowledge and literature in virtual warehousing industry, which is an area that has not been explored. Chair, allow me to go to the general objective. The general objective is to examine the relationship between responsibility shift, warehouse information quality, trust, information technology, and logistical process integration among virtual warehouse vendors in Uganda. The theoretical frame, my theories, in regard to my study, I'm looking at goal setting theory, resource dependent theory, and stewardship theory. And in goal setting theory, this theory was established by Locke and Latham between 2019, 2013, 2006, 2002, and 1990. Because these writers are still alive, so they keep on updating their theory. It is based on information sharing, goal levels and performance, and effects of setting goals, and talks about motivation for organizational performance and growth. It assumes that if goal difficulty, goal specificity, and goal expectancy are put in place, task performance is improved. This theory proves to work for an organization because it's an open theory. Goals predict and explain and influence performance, and goals are regulators of action. Locke and Latham expanded on the employee development as achieved through training, assignment of challenging tasks, and structured feedback. For virtual warehousing to perform, virtual warehousing vendors need to set the direction by following objectives and communicating strategies in order to observe the impact. However, it has weaknesses. For example, personal factors are not being constantly combined in the theory. Setting goals can cause unethical behavior. Achievement of the goal is not the primary key. There is no evidence to prove that goal setting improves job satisfaction. The theory does not exactly show which type of goal affects performance and the consistent effect of satisfaction. Thus, a support from resource-dependent theory. Resource-dependent theory was being promoted by Peffer and Salanch in 2003.
You have about 5 minutes, so please use them correctly.
Okay, it is based on the notion that all farms critically depend on other farms, as the saying goes that no man is an island. Though this theory also has some weaknesses, the theory does not understand the environmental relationships, and not all types of internal organizational arrangements are equally suitable for coping with resource dependencies, as some have greater freedom and legitimacy, enhancing effects than others. Here goes to a need for theory, and stewardship theory was being authored by Hernandez in 2012. The theory emphasizes on the employee growth, development, and practice, longevity of the organization, justice among top management and subordinates, teamwork and trust, and gives an insight on operational and mental influences on the employees. However, it also has some weaknesses because it doesn't indicate the time it's supposed to start and end, and it's static and does not give a precise definition of the theory. Hence, a need to use all these three theories in order to come up and contribute knowledge to the literature. Here is my conceptual framework. Responsibility shift leads to information technology. Information technology leads to logistical process integration. Warehouse information quality leads to information technology. Information technology leads to logistical process integration. Trust leads to information technology. Information technology leads to logistical process integration. Chair, thank you so much. This is the end of my presentation, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Peace. It's always lively to listen from a powerful presentation like you've just given us. You seem to be very passionate about the presentation and the concepts that you are talking about here. We have about 8 minutes, and I would ask anyone who can give a piece some sense of direction from whatever she has presented to do it just right now. If I can just see a hand, so that we can, I don't want to be the chair and the first one to make a critique. Peace needs a sense of direction. So can we see that coming? I know the senior colleagues would be very eager to give something. I don't know. Bernard, are you online?
Somebody has raised up a hand.
I don't see a hand yet. Bernard Wabukala, are you online? Okay. I can see something in the chat. Oh, it's just well done, please. Let's hear from Stephen. Yes, Stephen, go ahead, and then I will listen to Evelyn. Stephen, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, my fellow friends. Thank you, Senior. Thank you, professors, for the opportunity, especially for our young academicians. I really appreciate for the presentation and the energy from Madam, and congratulations for that. Last week, I attended another presentation online, and I heard some senior professors and the doctors and the lecturers. It was my first time, but I think it's good to share with the colleague in this group. They say the conceptual framework, we should not say this is my conceptual framework. We should refer some of the past literatures and say maybe it's adopted somewhere or the conceptual framework. Yes, it's a mix of variables from different empirical and theoretical, but you're not the first person to develop the conceptual framework. They said we should put some reference on where we got that ideas. Then I said, oh, this weekend, I will try to ask my professors in this group and the doctors and the senior and the chairman of this group to elaborate more on that. Thank you. I'm happy to submit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I think the comment is quite appropriate. We tend to own these conceptual frameworks and completely forget that we have actually, these are a result of the literature that we've read, which might not be a good thing. Can I hear from Charles? And after Charles, I will listen from Brenda. Yes, Charles, in less than a minute.
Thank you very much. I'm Charles, speaking from Tanzania.
Great.
I want to add up on what has the last speaker spoken on the conceptual framework. I agree that the conceptual framework comes from literature review, the combination of theories and empirical studies. But normally, there are people who write that the source of a particular conceptual framework is the researcher. But I don't agree on that. But normally, the source of any conceptual framework or theoretical framework or conceptual model is the theoretical and empirical review done by the researcher. But such a structure such the drawings that we put there and the writings that we put there before we draw this kind of structure is automatically drawn from the literature, theories, the combination of theories and particular studies. So the source of it is the theories and the empirical review. But we don't have to, this kind of structure, which shows the relationship of the variables, can be drawn from the empirical and the theories, but this kind of drawing showing these arrows that bring up the relationship. For instance, here we have the independent variable, which is actually the predictors. Then we have the mediating variable, and we have the dependent variable. This kind of drawing is done by the researcher, but based on the theories and the empirical studies. That is number one, this kind of drawing. But number two, there are sometimes the models that are already set, the framework that are set. For instance, in Tanzania, we have a framework on quality assurance, for instance, in education. It's already set. If you are talking of technical education, we have what we call National Council or Technical Council for Technical Education. It has already set the framework for quality assurance. And it is actually drawn from the European Union kind of quality assurance, internal quality assurance framework. It is already there. So you can say now the source is actually that particular authority because you are going to adapt it. And sometimes you can also adopt it directly, the theoretical model from a particular previous study. Automatically you take it as it. But there are two those situations whereby you adopt it, something as it is because you are going to apply directly in your study, or sometimes you can draw the relationship of the variables depending on the way you have gone the theories and for instance, a vehicle model in service industry, you directly adopt it. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Charles. I can't go off without Emojong in less than a minute. Can you just give some direction to Peace?
Okay, thank you so much, Peace. The efforts are well appreciated, and thank you also for the courage of coming up. One of the key comments which I noted from the last week's presentation, we spoke about a theory matrix. And I noticed you spoke about the goal-setting theory, the resource dependency theory, but you didn't specify how does it give rise to your independent variables, such as the logistical process, or how does the resource dependency theory give rise to maybe some elements here. So is there need for you to integrate your theories to your conceptual frameworks to show that rise emerging? Two, from your topic, it didn't come out clearly on your introduction. Is this a mediated, moderated model, or is it a mediation, or is it a moderation model? That's something which seemed not to have been clearly brought out earlier on. But otherwise, overall, thank you so much for the efforts and for the courage to be here. Thank you.
You are very welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you, Emojong. I'm very sure that if anyone has any more comments, they can put them through the chat, and I'm very sure that Peace will be very happy to receive that. I saw Brenda Akankunda. Please, can you just forward the comment to the chat? I thank you all for attending the students' conference. It's always great to have just the first session to have the 62 members. I thank Dr. Ahmed Walgembe and Professor Ntai for this initiative. We cannot thank you any less than we are, even if we have to do it every day, because we are very appreciative, and the Students' Congress is really getting the fire that we have wanted it to have. I thank you all, the senior colleagues who are online, who have been online. To thank you, Dr. Mutumba, for whatever we've seen. I saw Professor Laura wanted to also give a comment, but we are completely out of time. So let me invite Dr. Michael Okoche to take it from here. Thank you very much. Dr. Michael Okoche?
Chair, I'm just assuming, Chair,
yes.
I think since Peace has made her presentation and she wanted to get feedback, I think we give her maybe 10 minutes and we also give feedback on what we think can be worked on. And maybe Laura can go first and then I'll follow.
Okay, can we also receive Brenda, are you there? You can raise up your hand after. So let's go, Professor Laura.
Let me go after Brenda.
Brenda, are you there?
Yes, Shafiq. Thank you so much, Professor. You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Peace. My comment was that Peace could have a theoretical matrix that will really show the assumptions of each theory and how these variables are actually coming up and the limitations, instead of explaining, so that members are able to see and may be able to encourage her. That was my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peace. Let me read something from the chat before Professor Laura comes in, from Chigozi, from Evelyn Kabongera, who actually put up her hand. Please explain why you call it a statement of opportunity. And then Francis is saying that thanks, Peace, while you would prefer a statement of opportunity, I just suggest you start with the traditional statement of the problem. Basically review the video shown here at the start. Okay, let me now, I think, go to Professor Laura. Yes, Professor Laura.
Thank you, Shafiq. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, Professor.
Okay. Thank you, Peace, for your presentation. I note that you are departing from the traditional statement of the problem. Now, with statement of opportunity, okay, I'll not say much on that. The only thing I want to mention here is that the conceptual framework that is before us must be aligned with that story of yours. So in your story, I missed seeing some of these variables. I heard you talk about employees lacking skills, employees, something to do with the employees. I heard something about customer satisfaction, but I did not see some of these things you have in the conceptual framework. So try to see how you align this with the story. I'll not say much about the story here. Okay, now I want to focus on the conceptual framework. This goes to every student on the call. When you have, I want to agree with the comments from Brenda. Okay, those who have already shared their comments on the conceptual framework. Yes, a conceptual framework is derived from review of theories and empirical studies. That is true, meaning that down there, below that diagram, we are supposed to see the source of your information. That said, when you have those wonderful variables, before you even go to the indicators and all that, you must have operational definition. The operational definition help you to see how you are going to measure your variables. Take, for example, logistic process integration. It's a process. A process. What is involved in a process? How do you define process integration? Based on that definition, are those items in that box measuring? Are they aligned to that operational definition? Or put it in another way, how did you measure process integration, logistical process integration? I'm not an expert in that area, but that is what I had in mind. Then there's that independent mediating variable, information technology. What is a variable? A variable is something that changes state with time. But look at the measures. Hardware. Are you talking about computer hardware? Are you talking about, I don't know. What is information technology in your study? To be able to understand this, look at these other arrows on the moving from the IVs. Warehouse information quality, for example. So if there's improvement in the warehouse information, then it will improve the hardware, the software. I don't know. I have a problem with that middle variable. Explain to me what it is and what exactly you intended to tell us with that particular box, information technology. Okay, now when these technologies are in place, it improves goal alignment, it improves shared risk, it improves joint decision making. I don't know. Anyway, you need to explain for us what you meant by information technology in your study, and that link, that move that is from information technology to logistical process integration. I'm failing to get it there. Then trust. One thing I've noted about students is forcing variables to have constructs or dimensions. The question I want to pose is trust a multidimensional variable or unidimensional variable? What is trust? You know, when you put all those, I want to call them children, when you give children to those parents there in your conceptual framework, when it comes to the questionnaire design, each child there must have its own items in the questionnaire. We're talking about trust. Repeated interaction. What kind of questionnaire items are you going to have for the first bullet there? And then the second, the third, the fourth. Do you have independent questionnaire items for each of these? Because ideally, what you're telling us in the conceptual framework is that those are the measures or dimensions or constructs of a particular variable. If those are the constructs of a particular variable, when it comes to the questionnaire, each construct must have its own set of items. Have that at the back of your mind. Okay, then when you were presenting, I expected you to tell us to marry your explanations with the theories. For instance, you are telling us about responsibility shift and logistical process integration. You only said responsibility shift leads to that. But that's not what I think you wanted to mean. You wanted to, I think, say there is an association between this and that. And then go on to tell us which theory are you using to back up that relationship. I missed to hear that. That's why you are hearing people saying theories arising to IVs. Theories don't give rise to variables. Theories explain a relationship. They don't give rise to variables, but rather explain a relationship. For example, responsibility shift, the relationship between responsibility shift and logistical process regression must have a theory that explains that, that relationship, okay? Yeah, and then there was, someone made a submission that a conceptual framework can be adopted. Choice of words. When you say this was adopted, and you just stop at that adopted. Adopted means that you don't make any changes. So you are safer saying that the conceptual framework was adopted with modification. With modification. Because if you don't add with modification, it means that you got this from somewhere and you're bringing it here as it is. Okay? Choice of words. For now, I'd like to stop there because some of the issues that noted had already been raised. Over to you, Chair. Thank you. And thank you, Peace, for the courage. After the corrections, please come back and present again. Over to you, Shafiq.
Thank you, Professor Laura. Can Professor Ntai, you had something for her?
Thank you, Chair. And I think I want to begin by thanking Peace for the effort expended in producing this work. I know that she has been working really very, very hard. My comments are somehow consistent with what Lola has just said. And for me, when I listened to her topic the first time when she was stating, she said she was looking at logistical process integration among virtual warehouse vendors in Uganda. So what came to my mind at that stage is an issue of virtual enterprises. And for me, the moment you start talking about virtual enterprise, you are talking about a temporary alliance of enterprises that seem to come together to share skills and resources in order to attain the business opportunity. And of course, the cooperation between these enterprises is supported by computer networks and adequate information technology tools and protocols. So in which case now would be dealing with the issues of virtual enterprise lifecycle, virtual enterprise members and nodes, and virtual enterprise businesses, and virtual enterprise coordination or coordinators, and a few other things where you deal with advanced coordinating functionalities and integrated logistical management support systems within these virtual enterprises. So given the fact that she's dealing with the virtual warehouse vendors, so I would imagine that it takes on that kind of dimension. Now, that being the case, now we move towards the conceptualization. If she's looking at logistical process integration in a virtual enterprise, then you cannot begin talking about joint decision making, aligned goals, coordinated planning, shared risks. In fact, there you'll be looking at something similar to collaborative arrangements. But you know, she's looking at virtual enterprises. So she'll be looking at layers in this case, where you look at the integrated logistical management support systems within virtual enterprises. So issues of coordinating functionalities, whether that is you are looking at the internal or external coordination, because it could be within the same business or probably across businesses. So a number of issues then have to be dealt with. But I think in her case, she was more or less looking at, she wasn't actually looking at virtual enterprises. So, but I think she may have to go back and rethink because that is necessary. It's important to do so. So when you, and if Peace had bothered to read literature, right, a lot of work has been done. In fact, as she started presenting her case, I could hear some bit of confusion between logistical process integration and also supply chain integration. And to her, logistical process integration is the same as supply chain integration, which is not correct. And remember, she's looking at virtual enterprises in this case. So I think there is a confusion in what she's looking at. But please, if you bother to look at literature, especially the conceptualization, you'll discover that when you are dealing with the issues of process integration, right, you are really talking about forming, coordinating or blending into a functioning or unified whole. And of course, when you deal with integration, you're dealing with the act or process or an instance of integrating. And if you look at early research that was conducted a long time ago in 1937 by Coas Williamson, 1975, and so forth, by then they were looking at issues of transaction cost analysis. So that was the earlier approach. And of course, that has since changed because of the new perspectives on research that is conducted. And if you look at the key components of integration now, they are looking at issues of connectivity and issues of simplification. And if you go into virtual realities, you are looking at really those aspects, right, where you start connecting related business processes to meeting the overall organization objectives. And remember, you are talking about virtual enterprises coming together to deliver what is required. So in other words, if you're going to look at the supply chain, please focus on that. If you're focusing on logistical processes within the supply chain, you can also do that, but do not confuse the two. So generally speaking, look at the internal external perspective, and then look at the process view, because that's what you are actually trying to examine. And of course, the internal processes integration and the external process integration are very important when you are dealing with the connectivity and simplification. So for me, I think this is an interesting area, but Peace has to read widely and understand the subject that she's addressing. Some of the constructs you are lumping together are actually wrong. Trust is not measured by those things that you are talking about. If you're talking about ICT, I don't know what you are going to vary under hardware, right? And so forth. So you really need to rethink, right? That doesn't mean that what you've done is totally wrong, no. But you have to think harder, right? So that you come up with something that can easily be accepted. Chair, I submit.
Thank you, Thank you very much, Professor. The comments to peace are not just for only peace, they are for all of us. I'm very sure Professor Laura talked about the variable, let the concept be a variable. Is information technology a variable? It must be able to vary so that it can be measured from a lower point to a higher point. Professor Nta is emphasizing read. Let us not always think that whatever we put down, we fall in love with it, and it looks like the absolute truth. And I think she's emphasizing never force constructs, and even the dimensions, the latents that come out of it, they should be at least they should be gotten from literature other than forcing them on to the other side. I think we are going to really leave it here. I don't know, do I have Dr. Michael Okoche or Dr. Ahmed Walugembe? I don't see them online, but we have a presentation from Elasu, if I'm not mistaken, or James Mubangisi. I don't know who.
Dr. Michael Coach is around.
Great. Dr. Michael, please, I have the honor to let you in and pull off the next session. Thank you very much, Dr. Michael Koche. Dr. Okoche, are you there?
He just needs to unmute.
Okay. Dr. Michael Koche, you are mute for now.
Chair, I suggest that you ask Dr. Ibrahim Musenze to
hello?
chair. Oh, okay.
Dr. Michael Koche, thank you. You are there.
Okay, thank you.
We are just calling upon you so that the session can start. We apologize that we took a little longer than we usually take for the Students' Congress, but welcome to the next session for the next presenter. Thank you.
Okay, let us take this opportunity to welcome the next presenter, and then I think after he has done his presentation, then we can be able to give comments. You say the next presenter is who? Shafiq?
Mr. Lasu.
Okay, you're welcome, presenter, and then we shall be able to support you further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Okoche, and thank you very much, Professor Ntai and the rest of the team. Trying to see if I can put this on. I hope I'm on.
Yes, you can see the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, we're seeing the screen.
Once again, thank you very much for the opportunity for me to share the ideas that I've been trying to put together. My name is Joseph Elasu, and my area of interest in the study is energy transition. And the topic is really about household transition to energy fuels, clean energy fuels in Uganda. This is how we proceed. This presentation outlay. This is what I intend to run through this morning. Section 1, I will take us through the motivation, problem statement, general objectives, specific objectives of the study, conceptual framework, and justification. And in section 2, I'll take us briefly through the theoretical review and the empirical review. And in section 3, we'll be handling methodology. Under methodology, we'll take you through the philosophical orientation of the study, the research design, research approaches, data and data sources, and then model specification. Okay, I think we can now start. So as I've said, my area of study is energy transition, and in the context of the households. I'm interested in looking at transitioning households from solid fuels to clean fuels. So what motivates me to look at this area? World over, there is a growing evidence that a significant percentage of the population today still meets their household needs using unclean fuel sources. In fact, the recent studies by, I think, Kenya and the team, they put it at 40% worldwide. 40% of the world's population is depending on unclean fuel sources, especially to meet their household needs. And what is worrying enough is that even if this 40%, the biggest percentage is really in sub-Saharan Africa and in other areas of undeveloped countries, low developed countries. Now, this situation worsens when it comes to Uganda. The recently released report from UBOS shows us that at least 94% of the population or the households in Uganda are really depending on biomass, for example, as a main source of energy to meet household needs, for cooking. And 44% of the households use unclean fuel sources for lighting. So this trend has been persistent for a long time. We have had a situation where people are predominantly surviving and using unclean sources of energy to meet their domestic energy needs. Now, what is the implication with this? There are quite 3 things that probably I would like to share with us. One is that unclean energy sources emit some dangerous gases, especially carbon dioxide and others. The issue with these fuel sources is that when they emit these gases, it pollutes the air, and this is what we call household air pollution. Now, this household air pollution poses serious health-related risks. We have literature giving us evidence that a number of premature deaths are related to this household air pollution. Now, that is on the health perspective. What about the environment? So evidence is available that over extraction of plant resources, for example, in one way or the other, is associated with environmental degradation. And I think this is something that needs to be addressed, because we know the consequences of environmental degradation. The other aspect that we really see that is affected when we over-rely on unclean energy sources is the climate issues. We believe and we know from literature that the use of these unclean sources release some form of particulates. And these particulates, I think, PM 2.5 is dangerous, especially to the ozone layer. And once we don't damage the ozone layer, the consequences of that will end up with global warming. And this also has its associated effects. So because of all these issues that relate to the, to the consumption of unclean fuels, you'll find that it becomes a challenge for us to continue like this. Maybe when I talk about solid fuels or unclean fuels, in this case, I'm really referring to firewood, charcoal, cow dung, coal and many other forms of fuel that are not clean and they are being used to meet domestic household needs. Now, so what do we do in this case? The ideal situation is to transition households to begin to use clean fuels. To be important to see households meet their energy demands or their energy needs using clean energy fuels. And in this case, the clean energy fuels we are talking about are electricity, biogas, natural gas, LPG. This would be the ideal, sources. Of course, one would say that, but LPG may not be, purely very clean, but what is released from LPG is manageable. The amount of emissions from LPG cannot be compared to what comes out of coal, it comes out from firewood, cow dung, and everything. So therefore, it would be ideal to transition households to use this form of clean fuels. Now, but what does this entire transition, what is it about? Now, one is that maybe we need to try to define this and then probably look at different dimensions of the conceptualization of energy transition. The International Renewable Energy Agency and RENA, maybe I can call it RENA in short, defines energy transition as a pathway to transforming the global energy sector. And ideally, the concept here is to move the global energy sector from the fossil-based to zero carbon. So that is the ideal situation, according to RENA. But when we bring it to the household context, different scholars have now tried to look at this energy transition, different perspective. And to begin with, if you read the works of Harris and Jones, in 2014, for them, they say, no, energy transition is about a shift in fuels, from one fuel to another. And these fuels, we know that they don't work on their own. So these fuels have technologies that they work with. If we are talking about LPG, then we must talk about the technology associated with it, which is the cylinders and so on. So that means, according to Harris and Jones, the energy transition is a shift in fuels and associated technologies that are used to draw that energy from that energy fuel. But when you read the works of Arendt and his colleagues in 2017, for them they say it's about substitution in the fuels, such that if a household has been using cow dung, maybe in the event that the social status of the household improves, then that household should be able to substitute cow dung, for example, with kerosene. So for them, energy transition is really about the substitution of fuels and the associated technologies. When you read the recent works of the Blakes and his colleagues, for them they say energy transition is about switching to alternative fuels. So, but in the end, if you look at all these conceptualizations, you will notice that there is at least a change. There is at least a change from one fuel to another. If we are talking about a shift, if we are talking about substitution, we are talking about switching. So we are really talking about moving from one fuel source to another and the associated technologies. So this gives us a picture of what energy transition is all about. Now, I would quickly take us through the statement of the problem. There's been a lot of effort, especially for Uganda, to try to get the solid fuel system to clean it. Recently, the government of Uganda, the last 3 or 4 years, gave tax exemption to LPG. Few years ago, I think until late last year, we had free electricity connection policy. There's been a lot of emphasis on rural electrification. So all these efforts from government and other associated agencies were geared to helping households move away from the consumption of solid fuels to clean fuels. But it's unfortunate that to date, the recent report from UBOS shows that only about 6% of the households use clean energy sources to meet cooking needs, and about 56%, use clean energy sources for lighting. Now, there are quite a number of studies that are specific, that are meant to try to identify the factors that are responsible or that could explain why there is this low level of transition. But this is studies, especially for Uganda, the conceptualization has been that we are focusing on the choice of fuel rather than the transition itself. Now, the issue with this approach is that even the dirty fuels, the biomass, form part of the options the households will be able to choose from. So that ceases to be an issue of transition. The issue of choice includes even the dirty fuels form part of the set from which the household will choose from. And so the focus has been that we are trying as much as possible to study the factors that influence the choice of the energy fuel, such that we are interested in looking at what factors can enable or can impede the acquisition of that kind of fuel first and the associated technologies. So this takes us away from the ideal situation that should be the transition to the clean fuel. The other issue we have in here is that studies that are specific to try to see what factors should be prioritized in order to help households to not only transition, but also to sustainably use clean fuels seem to be not very available in the current literature. Household-specific studies on the factors responsible for low levels of transition and sustained use of this clean energy are a bit scarce. But elsewhere, outside Uganda, a number of studies have been done, really, to try to find what factors are responsible for the low transition levels. But the issue we have with this is that there are very pertinent aspects in a household that influence decision-making generally. These aspects, especially the issues of the dwelling type of the household, if I can call them generally, the housing characteristics, the tenure status, the kitchen space, migration patterns. These components have not really been addressed in the current literature in as far as transition is concerned. So you find that these components are handled in fewer circumstances where the focus has been on the choice of fuel. Now, the other concern here is that the theories that have been used to anchor these studies are such that the focus has been on the energy ladders theory, which is also a hypothesis, and the energy stacking ladders, theory. So these theories have been widely used to explain energy transition. The issue here is that these theories focus on socio-economic aspects of the household. But you'll notice that households do not make decisions based on the social status alone, the economic status alone. There are very many other factors that influence decisions of the households. And we think incorporating some of these aspects and studying them together would make us probably come up with factors that should be prioritized if we are to move households from solid fuels to clean fuels. Now, so this study, therefore, the interest here is first of all to bring together these factors that seem to be not well explained in literature, and try to use them to explain the variation in household energy transition. We're probably interested to look at the interactive effect of these factors combined together and trying to explain the energy transition at households level. And this study, therefore, instead of the energy ladder and the stacking theories, would adopt the mid-level socio-technical transition theory to help explain this. The reason for this is that this gives us leverage to look at factors beyond the socio-economic status of the household. With that said, I would therefore take us through the objectives of this study. The main objective here is to really investigate the antecedents for household energy transition in sustained use of clean fuels among households in Uganda. And to be able to achieve that main objective, I have the following specific objectives that will guide this study. One is to determine the endogenous factors that should be prioritized in order to achieve household energy transition in Uganda. And number two is to investigate the influence of exogenous factors on household energy transitions in Uganda. And finally, number three is to determine the most important factors for the sustained use of clean fuels among households in Uganda. Now, the justification for this study is drawn from these 3 points that I have here. One is that there is a need to control household air pollution. It is very important, given the dangers of household air pollution that we have already highlighted in our background. It's very important that this household air pollution be controlled, and efforts should be really geared towards controlling this. Number two is that we all believe that, and we know that our National Development Plan and NDPs, the goals of 2015, 2016, 2019, 2020, and even NDP 3, the focus has been really to encourage households use clean sources of energy. And I think this is why we have the rural electrification issues, where we have the free connection policy, tax exemptions on LPG and its components. The idea behind it is to make sure that we shift households to clean cooking energy sources and lighting energy sources together. So the other issue is that Uganda as a country has really made commitments to international climate conventions and agreements such as the Paris Agreement and the Kyoto Protocol. Now, this put together, this research then is really timely, since this is the focus now to make sure that we move households to clean energy sources. This study will be guided by this conceptual framework, and the schemes that we see here, or the concepts that are here in this conceptual framework, generated from the review of literature That's where all this comes from. And we believe that these endogenous factors, if we examine the most important factors within the household, the endogenous factors here, I refer to factors within the household. And these the demographic factors, technology, or the ownership of technology assets, especially related to energy. And the other housing characteristics that I've already mentioned in the statement of a problem, that is the nature of the housing, the kitchen space, the tenure system, and so on. If we integrate all these characteristics together, the immigration patterns should be able to influence the transition to clean energy fuels. So now, but in these endogenous factors, we have both the non-socioeconomic and then the socioeconomic. So other than the socioeconomic aspects, after looking at the literature, you notice that even these non-socioeconomic factors are very important in as far as making household decisions is concerned. The other aspect that we see here is the exogenous factors, and this is really the enabling environment. And in this case, the interest is on the fiscal policy, which is now the tax exemptions I was talking about. And then we have the connection policy, and we have the geographical factors. And this really relates to the location of the household, whether it's urban or rural. These factors have a role to play in explaining the household decisions. And I think when they are put together, they should be able to explain the reasons as why the households have not been able or will be able to transition to clean. Now, these theories that have been, reviewed in this study, as I said earlier, is that we have the energy ladder theory and we have the energy stacking model. Now, while reviewing these theories, you notice that the energy ladder theory really relies so much on the microeconomic theory of rational choice, that all fuels are available and that households move up the ladder as soon as the economic status improves. We are told that there are sets, all types of fuel are available, and households are very quick to move to the next cleaner source of energy as soon as their household socioeconomic status improves. And this is what Portia and Dodds in 1987 tell us. But also we notice that in the energy ladder, fuels are ranked, they're ranked such that probably electricity and LPG are superior probably to biomass and plant residues. And this could be based on maybe the efficiency, the cleanness and convenience, you see. But the idea that there is a linear relationship between income and energy consumption, this is where the issue is. It is possibly not very true that whenever households improve their sources of income, or when their sources of income improve, then they will automatically move up the ladder and then you'll be able to use clean energy and completely abandon the dirty energy sources. Now, given that kind of relationship, other scholars now say that no, it is difficult to have households completely switch away from unclean sources and then move direct to use the clean sources. In other words, this other theory, the stacking theory, for them, they believe that households will switch between fuels such that they will have both fuels, clean and unclean, so that some fuels are specific for preparing some kind of probably meals, and then some fuels are specific for other kind of meals. Now, there are two issues with this kind of approach. One is that there is no transition as per se, because if a household is stacking, it's possible that the household is using biomass and electricity. So in that case, that is stacking. That's not clean stacking. It would be okay if it's specific that the household has now moved to use clean stacking, such that we have a household using, for example, LPG and electricity. So that wouldn't be a problem. But here, the idea is that the household is now free to switch between fuels, so that even the unclean fuel is part of the set from which the household would choose from. And also, this energy stacking also relies so much, on the socioeconomic status of the household. So based on those issues that are highlighted, this study would go in for the multi-level socio-technical transitions theory. Now, this theory tells us that transition will occur at 3 analytical levels. And in these analytical levels, there are different factors other than household-related income. There are other factors that can influence the change in each of these analytical levels. For example, the first level is the niche level. And in this niche level, this provides spaces for innovations to be able to be developed. And this would encompass research and development and probably technological development. Now, when these innovations, especially maybe in energy-related innovations, if these innovations are accepted by the market and are embraced, like recently we have had a lot of innovations on solar, small solar panels that everybody can afford. And now we can see families, even in rural, most of the families are now using copper, small solar panels for lighting. Now, this niche allows innovations of that nature to come up, and if those innovations are embraced by the market, then they will displace what we now call the second analytical level, which is the regime. Now, if we have the regime which has been dominated by unclean fuel sources, if the lighting and the cooking systems in the country have been dominated by unclean energy sources, then we expect the growth from the innovations that are derived from this niche level should be able to displace the unclean dominated regime, so that people now move from using dry grass for lighting to using copper, copper solar for lighting, and maybe any other sources that are cleaner. And this will take us now to the landscape, and this is really the wider perspective of these changes that are affected by different factors, and this will include technological, social, economic, political, and environmental. So this multi-level socio-technical transition theory would now be able to let us now examine all these other political, economic, social, technical theories and maybe incidents or factors in explaining energy transition. So that is why this study has adopted the multi-level socio-technical transitions theory. So with that said, in the empirical review, in my write-up, which I will not be able to share here, is that in the constructs that are there in the conceptual framework, I have reviewed literature on them, and in the end, I was able to come up with the hypothesis after reviewing each construct or variable. That's why I have here the research hypothesis in this section. Otherwise, it would be maybe in next the objectives, but I prefer to have them here based on how I was reviewing the literature in these specific constructs. So the hypothesis that we're looking to test is that endogenous factors have no positive and significant influence on household energy transition. And number two is that exogenous factors have no positive and significant influence on household energy transition. And number three is that the endogenous and exogenous factors have no positive and significant influence on the sustained use of clean energy fuels. Now, these are the hypotheses that we'll be looking to test when finally we have the data. Now, permit me to take you through the methodology part of this study. To begin with, this study will adopt a positivist orientation. This is what will guide this study. Now, the choice for this paradigm is that when you look through the positivist orientation or the positivist paradigm, you'll notice that the ideal situation and what the positivists believe in is that there is only a single objective reality. And this reality is external to the perspectives of the researcher. But what is very important here is that the positivists believe that it's important that you start with theory, what is there, what is known, and then you build on the hypothesis. And this hypothesis should be what you're able to test. So this kind of deductive approach is what really I think fits in this study, because I believe that from theory, I'll be able to build the hypothesis that I have already highlighted in the previous slide. And that what I'll be interested in is now to test whether this hypothesis holds or not. But of course, the ontological disposition is that the nature, that knowledge or the reality exists. And therefore, our role here is only to test this hypothesis and either prove or disapprove them. And of course, maybe to talk about the epistemological disposition is really about how do we capture that reality that we claim, that the positivists claim that exists out there. So how do we capture it? So in this study, we now intend to use these scientific methods to try to test these hypotheses that are highlighted in the previous slide. The research design here is descriptive research design. I intend to use descriptive research design, and this will help me to obtain the information about what the phenomenon I'm looking at, and probably describe what exists with respect to the variables that we have already seen in the conceptual framework. I will, of course, have the research approach will be quantitative research approach. Data and data collection tools and methods. In this case, I'm looking at the data collection methods. The study will use secondary data, and this data we obtained from UBOS. And ideally, I will be using the panel data for this study. And for the purposes of quality control, some tests will be done on this data. We'll be looking at the linearity assumptions. We'll be looking at the multilinearity test assumption and normal distribution. But even in the end, after these results have been run, we should be able to do some post-analytical tests to confirm if the results we have working. Now, the model specification for the first two objectives, objective 1 and 2, this study adopts a switching model to be able to answer objective 1 and objective 2. Now, we are in this model, we are saying that this outcome variable here, YIT0, represents the one regime, the first regime, because we are now saying that in this case we have two regimes. We have a regime that is dominated by unclean fuels, and then we intend to transition to the regime that will be dominated by clean fuels. So in this case, our regime 0 indicates our first regime from which we want to move away to the second regime. So here we are looking at our outcome variable, which is YIT0, which is a function of these are our explanatory variables, the xi and t1, and we have our coefficients here, and then we have our error terms here, the unobserved. And then in the regime 2 that have indicated as regime 1, YIT1, and it is corresponding explanatory variables, and then the coefficients plus the unobserved. But you notice that in these specific specifications, you see that we have a T here that tells us that this is a specification for time series data. But I've already said that my interest is to use the panel data. So in that case, we now specify this with a panel version, which is YT1, which combines now all this to have this specification down here that can be used with the panel data. So in the end, YIT1 represents the outcome of the interest as a linear combination of the two regimes. Objective 3, the study will adopt a double hurdle model. So the idea here is that the household will have to go through 2 hurdles. A hurdle number 1 is to decide whether or not to transition to clean cooking or clean cooking and lighting fuels, to move away from regime 1 to regime 2. That is 1 hurdle. Now, but hurdle 2 is even after the household has chosen to use clean fuels, is it possible to sustainably or to continuously, consistently remain there and use clean fuels, or switch within clean fuels but not coming back to unclean fuels? So this double hurdle model will give us the opportunity to determine the sustained use of clean fuels, such that hurdle 1 will be to see that households will make a decision to transition, and hurdle 2 that the household will make a decision to stay using clean fuels. So these first 2 equations are simply showing us the 2 hurdles that the household will go through, and eventually we'll be able to look at the full specification of this model when we run it, to help us identify which factors are more likely to enable the household keep using clean fuels without thinking of falling back to use unclean fuels. So those are the 2 models that this study will use. One will be the switching model, to determine which antecedents are really very important in as far as transitioning the households to clean energy sources. And then objective 2, model 2, will be used to help us see what antecedents or factors are really important to keep a household using clean cooking fuels. The unit of analysis for this study will be the households. And the analysis tools that we are going to use basically will be using Stata version 16 to analyze this data. With this very many words I have spoken, I want to thank you very much. This brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening, and I would gladly welcome the comments. Over to you, Dr. Okweche.
Okay, thank you, Joseph, for such a wonderful presentation. Very beautiful slides, and I think I must apologize for having logged in late. I had a long week, But nevertheless, I think let me begin by appreciating all of us who have been able to log in for this session. I want also to recognize the different people and personalities who are in the platform. Of course, I know I'll be able to give a chance for us to give comments and raise questions, and I know we shall be able to move forward. But before we move forward, let me acknowledge all of us from different parts of Africa who have logged in. Specifically, I want to acknowledge our mentors, Professor Sam Adaramola from Norwegian University of Life Science. You are welcome. Our mentor, Professor Joseph Ntai. For most of us who have just logged in, Professor Joseph Ntai is the main brain behind this platform, and it has been able to benefit both senior colleagues, and his work is very evident from, you can see how people are able to wake up early. So Professor Ntai, we must appreciate him, and we are very grateful. Professor Laura Orobia, we appreciate you. Dr. Jolie Kavagambe, Dr. Sister Mary, Dr. Gideon Nkuzinza, Dr. Ibrahim Senze, Dr. Goreti Chione. I must appreciate all of you for always consistently supporting the students in their journey. But also I want to, in a special way, commend the students who have so far presented and the ones who are willing putting forward their work. I believe we are now moving in the right direction. So I think with that, I'll continue acknowledging other people, but I think let us go into the main gist of the matter where we are going to discuss the presentation. So already I'm seeing some hands up. So I think we have one hand up, or can't. So you can go ahead and make your comment. Unmute your mic and make your comment. That is Raphael. Raphael, you can make your comment.
I am Charles Raphael. I want to make some comments, although I stand to be corrected. But first of all, I would like to congratulate or comment on Joseph on the wonderful job that he did here, because coming up with this presentation incurred a lot of efforts and commitment. That is number one. Number two is about the presentation outlay. Personally, and from the experience of several presentations, I believe that when we talk of motivation, it also refers to problem statement to the level of even talking to the objectives and even to the level of justification of the study. So I thought that the main issue here, motivation could carry, problem statement, general objective, and justification could be under the general title of motivation. So these are the children of the parent known as motivation for the study. And actually I congratulate him because this is very good. Instead of coming now with a background and separate, but motivation can swallow minor elements, and small elements like statement of the problem, specific objectives, and the justification under that motivation for the study, or sometimes we call it problem setting. That is point number two. Point number three is about the specific objectives. When we go to the general objective, we are using the action verb, investigate. If you can move your slide to objectives. We are using the action verb investigate in the general objective. We are using investigate But when you come to specific objective number 2, again, there is the use of the same action verb, which is investigate. I thought that investigate is the general action verb. And when we come to specific objective, we break down that general action verb into measurable action verbs, straightforward action verbs, which are accommodated with the particular general action verb, that is investigate. So we can relook, we can revisit the use of the action verb investigate in the specific objectives number 2. Additionally, we have here 3 specific objectives. And when we go to hypothesis, we again have 3 hypotheses. I was wondering, we have 3 specific objectives, and again, we have 3 specific objectives. I don't know if you can move us to hypothesis, because we have 3 specific objectives. Then we have again 3 hypotheses. I thought that the scholarly work could be to break down the specific objectives and having more than 3 specific objectives by breaking down each factors within 3 specific objectives. For instance, if I'm talking of endogenous factor, and I have factors that are endogenous, maybe 3 of them, I could have 3 hypotheses out of specific objective number 1. So to objective number 2 or 3. That is point number 4. Point number 5 is all about about the methodology. Professors and other scholars could correct me. We normally have these words: paradigm, research philosophy, and research approach. I have been trying to go through some literature, and I found that the word paradigm sometimes can swallow 3 things at par. That is the research philosophy or philosophical assumption. Number 2, research approach, and research design. So I thought that if we talk of research philosophy, we could be talking only about positivism, interpretivism, or constructivism, and there is an emerging issue whereby we combine together nowadays, that is pragmatism. Therefore, and I thought also, when we are talking of philosophical assumption, should we go further to ontological, epistemological, because ontology or epistemology is that what brings us to positivism and other research philosophical. So maybe professors and other colleagues will settle this down. Did we need to also talk of ontological, epistemological, or we could just end up talking about positivism, because we originate this kind of philosophy from what we call ontology or epistemology. That is point number 4. Point number 5 is about the research design. Here, you are talking of the relationship of the variables. You have the cause-effect variables. Then you are coming up to talk about descriptive research design. To my view, I think we should use explanatory research design rather than descriptive research design, because explanatory research design is showing a kind of a causal effect whereby you have independent and dependent variable so to your work. So I stand to be corrected. We rather opt for explanatory research design rather than descriptive. You are not ending up just to describe what will occur between your variables, but you will show the relationship. You will show the relationship. There are variables that explain the dependent variable, that is energy transition. Although I'm not an expert of energy transition, but when I follow your work, the theories, the conceptual framework, automatically at the end of the day, we shall see these independent variables causing effect to this kind of energy transition. So I suggest that we opt for explanatory research design rather than descriptive research design. At the moment, these are my comments, and I commend to Joseph for the wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles Fafine. I know I'm going to give, let me give the colleagues of Joseph, but maybe you try to use a short time so that we have the senior colleagues give their input. So I can begin with Bernard, then we go to Brenda, then Bosco. Quick comment, please.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, my brother Joseph, for pulling this far and sharing your work with us. Now, Joseph, I just have some quick observations and things to think about as we work through this together. Number one, the emphasis was from the justification about energy transition, which was a shift. But I think what you need to add in that justification is switching from one fuel to another, which is fine. But I think you should add switching from another fuel to another, which is from one fuel to another, which is available. I think that is very critical. And then to a fuel which is also affordable, because you don't want to just push people to switch when the other side of where they are switching to is unreachable or unavailable. Two, maybe clarity on switching and shift going forward. You should possibly draw that line very well so that people don't confuse the two issues together. Now, in the objectives, I saw number 2 is on transition, number 3 is on sustained use. Is sustained use then the same as switching in this case? Because sustainability would possibly take another version to that. Now, a quick one on how you stated the hypothesis. They are coming from, you're stating them in the null hypothesis sense. But I thought we pick this from the conceptual framework, which is saying there is, or which is claiming there is, not there is no. So I know there are different formats of doing this, but I thought that is what for consistency it would be. So Joseph, let's go to the model, the specification where you are proposing for reference here. Okay, now, yes, I think appropriately you are shooting for regime switching estimation and models, which would claim for this particular cause. But I think you needed to also need the background conditions and factors behind the regime switching models. The common one that we know is the Markov chain models, which are consistent with the preconditions that arrive with the regimes. Regimes, these are states, so as it's claimed by other literature, you switch from one state to another. Now, there are conditions for doing that, which I think you have. One, including assuming a number of regimes. You must have a dependent variable, which you have. You need independent variables, which you have. There are parameters required for relating the dependent variable and independent variables, which you have. But the big attention here is on the switching probabilities. So this is why I'm proposing Markov, because this is to do with switching, potential to switch from one state to the other, from unclean to whatever you are proposing them to do. So I'm seeing you possibly could benefit from the Markov approach in terms of specification here. Now, the nitty-gritties of what you have stated here. I don't know if I is equals to 0. Now, for time series, there are usually maximum 2 things. The issue here is time t. So when you bring I in the first 2 equations, you're already making them panel, because I'm assuming I is a unit which would be a household at time t for regime 0. So that wouldn't that's not time series anymore. It becomes a panel. So possibly you do remove the i's on I first, and then we shall just have TO and T1. That would leave them in the time series sense. And then if you are shooting for panel which you are proposing, that's when the I comes in, because for every T in state 1 or state 0, you are looking at each household, which now becomes a panel for that case. But I also want to mention that it is regime switching models dominantly for time series estimations and analysis. It's not impossible to do for panel, but there are conditions around that which we can maybe look through and see. Chair, that's what I can say for now. Otherwise, thank you again, Joseph, for pushing yourself this far.
Okay. Next, quickly, please, Brenda and Bosco.
Oh,
Let us be quick,
okay.
because I want quick
Okay.
comments,
Thank you,
please.
Chair. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Joseph, for the wonderful presentation. So most of the issues that I had, Ben has already summarized them. So now I am going to concentrate on the 3 issues. One is on the conceptualization of transition, energy transition. Like he mentioned that it is based on his issues, environmental and the rest, he's proposing it as a solution. But now my issue is transitioning to a fuel alone is not a full solution. For example, being connected as a household to electricity and I do not have a cooker, which is a technology, then is not enough. So I would propose that maybe he looks at energy transition to energy solution transition, or transition to energy solution. Since a solution looks at both a technology and a fuel. That is one of the issues. Then the other issue is that Joseph is looking at both cooking and lighting and is going to use panel data. So I really see that this is a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of work because cooking alone has a lot of issues looking at a household perspective. So when you combine cooking and lighting, then I see it's a lot of really a lot of work and you might lose focus. And then going forward, my third point is on philosophy. I think Joseph maybe should be able to explain what a philosophy is adopting is, how it is going to be applied, and justify why he's adopting such. So, for example, positivism, you talk about why it is, how it is, and why you're actually going to adopt it. So there you're able to link or to explain the nature of reality, probably, of your dependent variable. So I saw that was lacking and maybe he can improve this. And then I also want to appreciate Joseph. You talked about the empirical review, and if you look at the comments, someone is really asking for the empirical gaps. So if you could back this up with your empirical matrix, I think maybe you might have done it. Just a summary of it, you crop it, and then in your presentation, we're able to see, and it is showing evidence that actually you're speaking from this empirical investigation that you have done. And then the issue is on the exogenous variables or the factors. How are you going to investigate the policy? You're using the panel data, the taxes, the connection policies from the household perspectives. How are you going to link them to your dependent variable? Okay, yes, thank you so much, Joseph, and I wish you the best.
Okay, thank you, Bosco, quickly.
Thank you, Dr. Okoche, and thank you, Joseph, for the presentation. I had 2 points. and one has been highlighted already, so I think I'll only address the remaining one. I seem to hear, Joseph, you have addressed your mind to clean fuels. However, during your discussion, I overheard you in engaging energy sources as well as issues of clean energy. Now, those three seem to not clearly come out separate in a distinct mode. What I might interest you to do also is to look at what is a fuel and what is clean energy. Because then when you talk of the fuels, I've had you going across to electricity, you have gone as far as biomass and put those together. Now, in my view, I think a fuel also has issues to do with emissions. That's how you contextualized it. Now, in electricity, what is the fuel in electricity we're talking about? If we're talking about electricity, are you dealing with hydro or solar? Because I had you touch solar as well. So what's the fuel in solar and hydro? Then when you talked of energy sources, it means I actually went to the wider scope. It brings you to all those sources of energy: electricity, solar, biofuels, LPG, including even the atomic energies. So maybe you might need to carefully radiate your thoughts to specific. If it is fuels, let's see how you tackle it in terms of the fuels. Otherwise, thank you so much for the presentation.
Okay, thank you so much. I think, Joseph, there are many comments on the chat room, but let me invite the senior colleagues, our mentors and senior colleagues in the platform to give you comments, but I must commend the students who have been able to raise up comments to you. I believe this will go a long way in improving your work. But as even we come, I want to acknowledge also one of our senior mentors in the platform, that is Dr. Ahmad Walgembe. Doctor, you're welcome. And we are just in the process of presentation. Joseph has done the presentation. So, senior colleagues, I really believe that this is our time to help Joseph to improve on his work. There was an issue which was, yes. I see. That is Dr. Ibrahim. Dr. Ibrahim, please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to take this opportunity to really thank Joseph for this very wonderful presentation. I was particularly thrilled by the level of confidence that he exhibited at the time of presentation of his work, and I think this is the way to go. You need to move in that direction. That said, I really note that the study by Joseph is really, all this investigation by Joseph is very, very relevant and important, especially at a time where we are seeing quite a lot of global effort pertaining to the control of pollution and carbon dioxide emission. And I think this investigation is really very, very timely. Now, having said that, I just have around 2 or 3 issues that I want to raise, and I think this should assist Joseph to improve his work. The first issue I want to raise is in the area of his proposed methodology to deliver this investigation. Now, when you look at his study or specific objectives, there are 3. And when you see the first specific objective, he says to determine endogenous factors that should be prioritized in order to achieve household transition to cleaner fuel. Now, when you look at that, yet when you go ahead with in his methodology, he proposes to strictly use a quantitative approach. I don't know how the quantitative approach is really going to be used to answer his objective number one. I see that the two are not in sight, and they will therefore need to get back and bring up that a specific kind of reconciliation. So that is a key issue that I think Joseph needs to look at. And I think the same thing goes with his philosophical orientation. He's proposing to study that he is going to be guided by, the study is going to be guided by a positivism kind of approach, but equally that must be brought in alignment with objective number one. Two, his background has really been written well. However, in his discussion, we fell short of listening to at least how this shift is going to really be achieved. Okay, is it from are we seeing a step up in investment, most especially in the energy efficiency? Are we seeing? He didn't mention about issues of elimination of fossil fuels, and then also whether it is an issue of access to electricity and clean cooking kind of sausage. So I think as he writes up his background, these issues really need to come up very well. Now, thirdly, I note that in his background and the statement of the problem is raising what we are calling a contextual gap, where he's arguing that studies on transition to clean fuel have majorly been concentrated in other kind of setting or countries, but the same are lacking in Uganda. I think that contextual gap is a little bit weak, most especially judged against the feeling that knowledge is universal. But two, even if it is to be sustained, I thought Joseph need to move a little bit further to explain why in his thinking he feels that the studies done elsewhere relating to transition to clean fuels are limited in as far as explaining a similar situation within the context of Uganda so as to really justify existence or sustainability of such a contextual gap. I think this really did not come out very well. And then the other issue I want to talk about is whereas he attempts to bring up theories to explain the framework, most especially linking both endogenous factors and exogenous factors to transition to clean fuels. I think he needs really to do more, most especially in explaining how the different kind of theories is proposing to use to explain that framework can link up to actually bring up a clear understanding of transition to clean fuel in the context of Uganda. And I thought that was also a little bit missing. And finally, the model to me appears to be a little bit more simplistic, most especially to the level of the investigation that is undertaking. You may need also to a little bit to review that model to make it a little bit complex moving forward. Otherwise, say for that, I want to really thank Joseph for this very, very wonderful presentation. And I think you are you are moving in the right direction. Good luck. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I don't know whether we have any other senior colleague who has comments. I'm inviting senior colleagues to give comments. Okay, as another senior colleague comes, I also want to give you some comment, Joseph. I think the work is good. It's in an area where many people are struggling. I just want to give you comments which should provoke your thinking. The first comment I want to give you is about the clean energy. I think Bosco talked about it. And, you know, there are so many conditions about, even if we are talking about electricity as clean energy, but the source, especially when you are using this heavy fuels for generation. And I think in Uganda already we have one. So I'm just trying to prepare your mind that even as you look at that, you know that there are debates around that, such that you be able to deal with it in case it comes up when you are defending. The other issue also, when you talk about endogenous factors and exogenous factors, especially on endogenous factors, you talked about socio-economic and non-socio-economic. When you talk about demographic, there's somewhere you talked about demographic in the conceptualization. Maybe you make it full presentation mode, that the conceptualization. When you talk about now, you see there. You see, you're saying non-socioeconomic. I think you can categorize this. Some focus on social factors, and then the other one, the economic factors. Because even when you talk about non-socioeconomic, demographic factors are already social. That's already socioeconomic. But I think you need to break them, deal with them appropriately. Maybe have social factors and then economic factors. Or maybe then the other non. I don't know why you're talking about non, because I would even imagine even the exogenous are non-socioeconomic. But I think there's some work to be done there. The other issue, we need to clearly see how you pick up how we are using these theories, because when you look at the way you are dealing with the theories, what is it that in this theory is helping your conceptualization? Which concepts have you picked from the theories? I think that needs to come clear such that it strengthens your study, because even the conceptualization. I think most of the comments are really being given are really very fundamental, but of course, somebody will really need to see from the background how all this thing comes up to be historically, conceptually, and I think that's what Bosco was talking about. When you talk about clean energy, you must be very clear. And I think also the comment given by Brenda should be able to help you in terms of households. Of course, you are going to use the data already there, and what that data will be basically helping you to do, it will show you how many more people are now getting to the clean source of energy for using. But what is the story behind? Can we hear some stories from these people, how they have been? And I don't think that panel data may help you. I think some interviews with some critical people might support you. So I would strongly suggest that even as you are going to see the generic pictures from the different households, maybe you could pick up a few households whom you interview, especially given the unique diversities of households, maybe those in rural areas, those in urban areas. So I think that story, the explanation, and because you might find that what we are talking about transition, because you are talking about transition, moving from unclean energy to clean energy. Can we get a few cases and then we try to understand them? What really drove them to leave the other energy, and do they really understand that it is? So I think that might help you And I would really think that positivism may not really help you unearth that. But I must say that the work is good, but the clarity of the two, what clean energy is and how it has moved, the concept, and then also within the country. And then there are those internal dynamics. What even is called clean energy comes from dirty energy. And then, you know, so anyway, I want to invite senior colleagues. Yes, Dr. Ahmad Wangembe, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Michael Koche, and thank you, my brother Elasu, for just a wonderful presentation. And I think we are learning a lot. However, allow me, there is people have been making a comment on the issue of your model. Can you please help me align your model again with your objectives? Just help me go back to that, because to me, I'm kind of lost. I just wanted to call, if you can probably explain it better again. Joseph?
Joseph.
Yes,
Joseph.
I was trying to put it on the mood, slide mode. So thank you very much, Dr. Koche, and thank you very much, my fellow students, for these very important comments you've made. Indeed, that is the reason as why I have come to present, so that you can help me make this work meaningful and useful. Now, I would like to ask Dr. Wagembe, I seem not to have gotten the question very well. If you may help me with the question again.
The question is, I wanted to help me, you realign your objectives and your model and re-explain both of them again to me. I'm also lost like you. Possibly I didn't understand you the way you didn't understand my question.
Okay.
So I wanted more clarity.
So maybe let me begin from here. What is ringing in my head and what I'm trying to bring out to the listeners and for your help is that the challenge is we would want to move away from the use of unclean energy fuels and its associated technologies to the use of clean fuel and its associated technologies. And because of that, the main objective here, or the purpose, is to investigate the antecedents. And these really the factors for household energy transition and sustained use of clean fuels among households in Uganda. In here, there are two things in this main objective. One is we want to see which factors are responsible that can influence a household's decision to move from fuel A, which is unclean, to fuel B, which is clean. But also the other subsection of this is, even after the household has moved, what factors are responsible for that household to continue using that clean fuel? Because we have instances where people have moved and they have fallen back. So that is really what is ringing in my brain, and that's where I'm looking for your help. And now when we came to specific objectives, the focus here was that within the household, we have those factors that are referred to as endogenous factors. We have those factors within the household that influence household decisions. So the objective number 2 that I thought of was, what are these factors? We want to determine the endogenous factors that should be prioritized in order to achieve household energy transition. And then number 2, we also have factors that are outside the setting of the household, but they can have an influence in the decisions that the households make. So that's what informs what you see here as objective number 2. So I thought that it's important to investigate which of these factors outside the households can influence the decisions of the households to move away from unclean fuels and then to clean fuels. And then objective number 3 is really focusing on the second subsection of the main objective, which is to look into which of these factors then are important when it comes to sustained use of this clean household, given that the household has moved into to use clean fuels. And so, so this is what I'm trying to show here. And of course, this is my thinking that I brought to you today, that you helped me. That I have this idea that these endogenous factors here that I've grouped as socioeconomic and non-socioeconomic factors. These factors here, they are factors within the household. And my thinking is that these factors here should be able to influence this transition. The endo factors here. We have non-socioeconomic and socioeconomic should be able to influence the decisions that households make in order to transition. And then these exogenous factors, in my thinking, are just the enabling environment. And this would be factors like fiscal policy that is really relates to the tax. And then the other factor, especially in the area of cleaner fuels, has been the connection policy. And then the geographical factors, the location of the household. Where is the household? If the household is located in Soroti, where I come from, in the village, it is a little bit very obvious that they will use firewood. And if a household is located in Kampala here, it's possible that there are higher chances that it may use LPG. So this is what has been ringing in my head, and that's what I brought to you for your guidance. So this is what I think, that these external factors should be able to influence the decisions, not only to transition, but also to sustainably use fuels. Doctor, that's what is in my brain. Over to you for your comment and guidance.
Right. Thank you very much, Elasu. I think I would say that number one, you reviewed literature, and in your review of literature, you identified a number of factors that may affect transition to clean fuels. And these factors, you have attempted grouping them into socio-economic factors, non-socio-economic factors. In my understanding and little knowledge on, I believe that a PhD, it is better to focus on something small and understanding it better than grouping so many things and getting confused. So my thinking is, you have not yet done enough work in terms of reading and appreciating these factors, and which of the factors do you want to study. You can't group all the non-socio-economic factors together. That grouping, ideally, you're going to get confused. Here, it is simple to measure, but as you move ahead, it is always better at a PhD to focus on something small and bring it out clearly. So I would love to say that your conceptualization of your independent variables, you may need to rethink. You may need to rethink. And that is number one. Number two of the same is that the wordings that you use the non-socio-economic and socio-economic factors which you have attempted to group, they don't align, they are not aligned very well with the objectives. And that is fatal. That is extremely fatal. Number 3 is the understanding when to use exogenous variables and endogenous variable. Why do we need them? And at what level do they come? And of course, the exogenous variables are known. They will be there, but do you really need to say that your objectives are based on all exogenous, endogenous variables? And there are so many. Why have you picked only those variables that can actually affect a transition to clean energy? The same applies to exogenous variables. Why have you picked those? So the concept of endogeneity in here, you are bringing it very early and it's going to confuse you. Me, I would prefer that I don't know how you may have got support from your supervisors, but I would prefer that you come back and really break down these variables into smaller items that you want to study. I mean, even if you take box number 1, that box number 1 can form 4 different variables that can form your independent variables. Technology itself is power. And then migrations. I mean, so many things here. You can pick one element and study it deeply than combining things together. Anybody who combines things together, it means that you have not yet read. You have not even yet decided what exactly do you want to look at to influence energy transition. Then the arrows, you should get to know that some scholars agree that the arrows that you have in the model should actually reflect your objectives. And that's not the case here. I don't know where you got objective, where is objective 3 in your model? I'm not seeing it. But in simple terms, your objectives and your model are not aligned. And to me, that is kind of fatal. Lastly, is something that Brenda talked about. I think Brenda talked about it. Transition to clean fuels. Your conceptualization of your dependent variable. Shift in energy fuels, substitution of fuels, sustained use of clean fuels. Possibly you have defense over that. You may need to give more clarity about that. But most importantly, I think the issue that came out from Brenda's submission that I wanted to emphasize here was the type of transition. The type of transition or the category of transition, because transition to clean fuels happens in so many ways. Your focus is needed at that level. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Professor Joseph Mtai had raised his hand. Professor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to thank all the members that have given comments to Elasu, and I also want to thank Elasu for the great job so far done. And since the conceptual model is still there, I think I will start from there. Elasu, given the fact that the kind of thing you are doing is a little bit different from the things that we are used to. For me, I would suggest that you actually do away with this kind of conceptual framework and do the mathematical and econometric modeling, and then later on you give us the theoretical basis for this, which I think Bernard did talk about. So I think that would be very good for you. Otherwise, you'll go into conceptualization, and you must now deal with things like substitution of fuels and so forth. But I know that you are coming from secondary data, right? For me, I would suggest that you go and think through the data. You actually start with the data, see what is there, and then thereafter you can work backwards and deal with some of those issues that your colleagues have mentioned. I would suggest that unless you pay particular attention to the statements made by, actually comments made by Raphael, I think that's the name if I got him right. Particular attention, because some of those things are technical. Those are technical issues that you need actually to address as soon as possible. Comments given by Bernard and Brenda and a few others. So you better begin with those ones. Those are really very, very technical, and they'll take you into the direction that we are thinking about, given the fact that you are dealing with secondary data. And since you are also dealing with the panel data and not time series, and I think Bernard did talk about that, where you have the regime switching. You can actually use the regime switching panel data models with interactive fixed effects. That is likely to solve some of the problems or challenges that Bernard articulated. Now, having said that, because I wanted to start with the conceptual model, now I go to the background. I think, Joseph, what you may have to do, there are two documents that you haven't thought about seriously. One is the third National Development Plan. I want you to really read that document, specifically chapter 13 that talks about energy development. And once you deal with that, you'll be able to improve your background significantly, especially when you start looking at the aspiration of Agenda 2030, right? And of course, if you deal with section 278, where you are dealing with access to reliable, clean energy, you'll be able to improve your background and the statement of the problem. So pay attention to the third National Development Plan, and more so chapter 13. Read it closely and make sure that you understand it very well. Two, I want you to look at the SDGs. I didn't hear anything in the background about the SDGs. More so SDG 7, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But SDG 9 could also be possibly applicable. I'm not very sure, especially since it deals with the building resilient infrastructure and promoting some bit of inclusive and sustainable industries. But I know SDG 7 is certainly very, very relevant, and deal with that, and also chapter 13 of energy development in the third National Development Plan. Having said that, I also recall during your presentation, and correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere when you are talking about either statement of the problem or somewhere you did say that you are interested in the interactions, right? However, in the conceptual framework which you have, but of course now I believe you're going to do away with it, the interactions are missing. Now, I think if you're going to deal with either your mathematical models or econometric models, in this case, the choice is yours. You can also mix them up, incidentally, the statistical and the mathematical models, if you want. You may have to introduce interactions, if you really feel that they're important, because you did talk about them unfortunately you left them there in your either statement or problem or background, and you didn't bring them through. The other thing that I think you may have to do, especially when you come to the methodology, you say so many things, and it's very hard for people to follow, right? I would suggest that you give us some kind of map. I don't know whether it's called a methodology map, whatever it is. That diagram will solve so many problems. And even when you come to the analysis, for every hypothesis, right, you'll be required to demonstrate to us how you're going to do the analysis. Of course, I can see this by the interactions. Don't forget the interactions there. And that will be very good for us. But the map seems to be missing in this case. I think so far, maybe lastly, Joseph, I think there are some documents that you haven't looked at, right? And for example, I think there is an article that was published in 2020, if I'm not mistaken. Again, if you go to the internet, you know, internet is awash with all these things. Look for an article which has a heading that is very similar to yours. It's actually household transitions to clean energy, right? But when you look at this, they also looked at, you know, I think the study was done in China, and they were looking at provinces, I think. And if you look at our economy, you discover that the transition you are talking about, if you are dealing with the rural areas and you have urban areas, and you have cities and then you have villages, you may have this kind of difference. So think about these kinds of things, and since you have secondary data collected by WUBOS, which is countrywide, they also do indicate some kind of regions and districts. So it is quite important for you to look at this journal article, because for me I think it has a topic that is very similar to yours, and you must be able to tell us your contribution to knowledge, because if somebody else has done something that is very similar to what you've done, so what makes your study unique in this case? And it is really published in a journal which is Nature Sustainability. So please have a look at it, and it's recent as 2020 or 2021 if I'm not mistaken. Joseph, you may also wish to know that there is a dissertation on the internet that has a topic that is very similar to the one that you have, and this study was done in Indonesia, and please look at it so that you don't get surprised at some stage when somebody says that the things you are talking about are things that were done by somebody else. So there is that, and it's a PhD dissertation, and the fellow studied in Indonesia, but it was awarded by University of Birmingham. So you need to really look at it so that at the end of the day you are able to contribute significantly without somebody saying that what you've done is similar to what others have done. Joseph, those are the comments that I can provide at the moment, and please think through those comments, and assuming that you have not picked all of them, because I know sometimes students don't really think about writing down every comment that is made, especially if some of the comments are given by fellow students. They may think that they're actually not very important. You can always request for a recording of this, since everything has been recorded. And for me, I would really want to see you addressing most of the comments that have been raised from students to the senior colleagues. Thank you very much. Chair.
Thank you so much, Prof, for such elaborate and very constructive comments. I think, Joseph, there are also comments in the chat room. I've seen Professor Laura has also highlighted that NDP 3 chapter 13 and SDG 7 can help you really contextualize your variables. I don't know whether, Joseph, you have something to say. Do you have any comment to make based on the comments which have been raised?
Thank you very much, Chair. As I said earlier, my purpose of coming and bringing my ideas to this forum is so that I can get feedback. And for me, this is very important. So I have religiously written everything and every comment, including those in the chat. So I am going to sit down and think through them and see how I can incorporate them and make this work better. I think that is, for me, it's very, very important. I thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. And I really believe that if you follow through these comments very well, the work will be good. And of course, it's a topical area. Everybody is looking towards how to make sure that we don't destroy our future by sustainably using the resources which are currently there, and clean energy is one of the biggest options. I think as you think about that, especially in rural areas, you see the level of adoption of solar energy. But anyway, I think you have got a lot of comments you'll be able to incorporate, and I know your work will tremendously improve. Thank you again once more for having given time to prepare the presentation and also be able to present, and I believe you'll be able to move forward. So I don't know, but I think this morning, since our special guest is Professor Adaramola still there, oh, I don't see him. I'd wanted to give him a chance to, yeah, Professor Sam. Professor Sam, I think I would want you to make some closing remarks because we've already had a nice interaction. So Professor Sam Adaramola, I would really love that you make some comments as we close this session, but I want to encourage all the students to make sure that you try to put across something. You know, we have a full week of reflecting. Like now we have had a presentation from one of your colleagues. So all the week you can be able to reflect and see how to put something together. And let this be a learning journey. And one time I was talking about that a PhD, like in this session, you see that you are many, but it's a lonely journey. You personally have to interact with knowledge and see how the work which the other person has presented interacts with their work, and then how it can help you improve on your work. How the comment which has been made by Professor Joseph Ntai can also be part of your work. But of course, some people, they think that, okay, it was Joseph Elas who was presenting that his work, but you systematically use every opportunity, the comments given by your fellow students, the comments given by other scholars on different work, but you see how is my work aligned to that comment, how they align. So that's, I think, how is called, why people say that it's a lonely journey. It's your journey towards your achievement. But when you are moving with everybody, some people might be just seated and waiting that maybe when I will present, then you wait and get comments. But even the comments which are given to other people can really help you to build your work. Professor Sam, I want to invite you to make closing remarks. Then Dr. Goretti Chione will be able to close with a prayer. Professor Sam.
Okay. Maybe we can have Professor Laura. Professor Laura, you could make a... Okay. I don't know what's happening, but can I invite Sister Goretti?
Chair, there are so many Goretti. There is Sister Marie Goretti.
Oh, Sister Marie. Okay, Sister Marie. Sister Marie, you could close, help us to make some few remarks, then close with the word of prayer. Sister Marie.
They are all muted.
Yeah. Dr. Gideon. Please.
Yes, internet challenge.
Challenge. Okay.
But Dr. Goretti seems to...
Dr. Goretti.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Michael. I would like to thank all the presenters this morning and all those who have made comments. I would like to thank Elasu for the courage to make the presentation he has done today, and also those who have given him comments. What bothered me about the presentation for Elasu was, if I'm a household and I'm transiting from what the energy usage I'm having today, transiting to another level, there are so many other factors that I would look at. I would look at my belief, my belief as far as appreciating the energy use I'm having now to another one, whether it would serve me better. And I saw concentration on social and economic factors and so on. Whereas in our context, in Uganda, where he's going to do the study, the context, especially in the rural areas, even in the suburban areas, even in the urban areas, we have some beliefs, we have some attachment to certain type of energy usage. So I didn't see anything about cultural beliefs in this. Maybe it is something that he needs to pay attention to because it plays a lot. I've looked at some incidents of households where a person will say, I cannot move away because this kind of energy does not serve me 100%, or I prefer to use this specific kind of energy in my different usages. So culture belief is very important. Some foods, especially if we're using fuels for cooking and so on, there are certain foods that cannot be considered good if used, say if you use electricity, which is clean energy, and the person will still use biomass, will use firewood. So I think those are some of the things which I noted. It's not a matter of just transiting, but what are those other factors? I didn't hear about cultural beliefs, and it plays a very key significant, it's a significant factor in influencing me to move away. That said, I would like us to thank God this morning for the gift of life and to enable us use the knowledge that we have received to better ourselves. And we pray that we get all the blessings to enable us to do this. In God's name I've prayed.